Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the long-awaited Adidas Don Issue 7. So we've had leaks of this shoe since freaking, I think like last year, And I've been looking forward to this shoe very much because as you guys all know, the Don Issue 6 was one of my favorite hoop shoes of last year. Such a great performer, amazing price as well. And yeah, as far as the tooling goes, it's actually pretty dang similar. We have that kind of like plastic midfoot shank plate that kind of comes up here in the midfoot. The traction pattern looks very similar. The upper is changed up a lot, however. And then this midsole, right, this cushion is actually Light Strike Pro, but they actually kept the exact same price. So the Don Issue 6 was 120 bucks. Now the Don Issue 7 is retailing for 120 bucks as well. So that's amazing. And if you guys do want to cop, I'll try to leave in the affiliate link in the description box. If you do choose to get this shoe, it does help me out if you buy it through the affiliate link in the description box. This of course is the first colorway that came out from Adidas. But then I just looked on their site and there's only a couple of sizes left, which kind of sucks. But again, I'll try to leave links in the description box. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones, right? So first of all, we have a translucent rubber for the entire outsole, right? So here in the forefoot and here in the heel, it is a different color, and also it is decoupled, which means, we have a separate forefoot and also a separate heel. And then we have, of course, the midfoot chain plate. It looks like carbon fiber as far as like this pattern goes, but it's actually not. It's just TPU. It's just plastic. But yeah, we pretty much have a circle, right? We have a very small circle here in the middle of the forefoot and kind of circles out on itself. We have a little bit of like a Y shape as well. And then here in the heel, kind of like the same thing. We have a circle pattern on the outside and then kind of like lines here in the middle of the heel. So yeah, as far as the traction goes, just trying it on my wood floors, the traction seems really good, and it seems very similar to the Don Issue 6, which of course is a good thing because the Don Issue 6 had amazing traction. And yeah, this has a very nice bite on my wood floors. And also, I don't know if you guys can see, hopefully it's coming out on camera, but yeah, there's a lot of dog hair, there's a lot of dust as well. And yeah, whenever I get a shoe in, I always wear it around my apartment the first day because, it's dead stock. I haven't worn them outside, and I don't wear shoes inside my apartment. But when I first get it, of course I do, because I want to try it with, first of all, the wood floor on my apartment floor. And also it's kind of dusty, I got 2 dogs, so it's always dusty. There's a lot of dog hair. And usually at first the bite is really good, right? And then I walk around in it a little bit, and because of the dog hair, it starts to pick that up, with all the dust, and starts to not have as good traction. Sometimes that's an indication of the shoe. It'll probably pick up a little bit of dust when I'm playing, right? But this shoe so far, just trying it on my wood floors and walking around with all this dust on, it still had pretty good bites. So it seems like it'll have good dust performance. Again, that's just first impressions, and that's just on my wood floors. It might perform differently on the actual basketball court because the finish is a little bit different, but that's just from my first impressions, right? So I'm pretty excited about that as well. So the bite seems really good, and dust performance right now seems pretty dang good. As far as the durability goes, however, no, like the rubber seems very soft actually. The grooves are not super thin, but it's not super thick either, right? And just feeling it with my finger, it's actually very pliable, so I wouldn't recommend it for outdoor use. And also, as far as the squeak goes, it does have a nice loud high-pitched squeak. Not super loud, but it does have a pretty nice squeak, which of course is very appreciated because I like to have a nice squeak in my hoop shoes. However, of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance. Now moving on to the heel to toe transition, overall the shoe feels extremely smooth because of the cushioning setup here in the heel, right? So when you're doing heel dominant strides, when I was walking around, first of all, you have a very nice rounded shape. Look at that, right? But also fully exposed Light Strike Pro midsole, and it's so freaking soft, you know what I mean? Like just pressing with my finger has a lot of give, which does feel very nice, right? So just heel striking a little bit, it feels extremely smooth, and also even a tad bit bouncy. It actually has a little bit of bounce, which feels pretty dang nice, right? So that feels great here in the heel. Moving here into the forefoot, we also have a very nice curved shape. So overall, just from the shape, it feels pretty dang nice. And also here in the forefoot, it's actually surprisingly flexible, you know what I mean? It's not super easy to flex. Like for example, the Luka 4. So Luka 4 is extremely easy. Look at this. And it's also extremely easy to, twist as well and bend. But here in the Don Issue 7, it's still able to flex, right? But it's not as easy, right? Gotta put a little bit more force into it. So here in the forefoot, again, surprisingly, it actually is flexible because, you know, when I first saw this shoe, I thought it was going to be more like stiff, you know what I mean? But it has a nice bit of flex and a nice kind of like springy feel. Not super springy, but it does have a little bit more of a stiffer feel than, you know, shoes like the Luka 4, the Sabrina 2, the Tatum 3, you know what I mean? So that does feel nice. I would say it's more overall smooth feeling, you know what I mean? Or rather than, you know, springy. And also we do have pretty good torsion support. Not the best, but pretty good torsion support because of this mid-foot shank plate, right? So there is the heel to toe transition. Moving on to the cushioning setup. So as far as the cushioning setup goes, that's my favorite part about the shoe so far. It feels so freaking nice, right? So again, they are using Lightstrike Pro, and I thought it was going to be pretty similar as far as like how it feels compared to just Lightstrike. However, they changed it up. You know, Lightstrike Pro actually feels softer. It actually has a really nice plush, kind of like a marshmallow type of feel. You know what I mean? It just feels more like it wants to absorb a little bit more impact, you know? So when I'm just walking around, especially here in the heel, it feels extremely soft. And also, like I said, it has a nice kind of like rebound back as well. It's not like only super soft. It also feels kind of bouncy. Not super bouncy, however, but it has a nice rebound back, you know what I mean? So that feels extremely nice here in the heel. And also, like I said, it is pretty much fully exposed for the actual foam, so there is a crazy amount of heel compression as well. And not only does the midsole compress, but also the underfoot cushion, especially in the heel, feels pretty soft, right? So comparing to shoes with a very soft mesh strobe board, for example, like, you know, the Joker 1 GT, or, you know, even like a drop-in midsole like the 808.5 Ultra, or maybe like the Kai 2 or something like that, those have a soft mesh strobe board and the underfoot cushion is just straight up softer, you know what I mean? But in this setup, first of all, we have a regular kind of like paper stock Adidas insole, you know what I mean? Like their regular Adidas insole that they usually give us, very, very thin, not super nice, doesn't really add too much to the stepping comfort or the cushion, right? But then underneath that, we actually have a foam kind of like strobe board, you know what I mean? And, you know, when you first look at it, or when I first looked at it, it seems kind of soft because it's like a foam strobe board, but then like underneath it, it should have like the really soft Lightstrike Pro foam right underneath it, obviously, right? But then when I'm pressing it, even with my finger, it actually feels a little bit glued down right underneath that foam strobe board. So it has a little bit more of a stiffer feel. Again, I'm not saying it's stiff at all. I'm just saying it's stiffer than like, you know, the, you know, soft mesh strobe board setups that I'm used to, you know? But then this has, you know, for me, I'm average weight, I'm not super heavy. And then it just has like the immediate step in comfort isn't super soft, right? But then when I'm kind of like, you know, jogging, I haven't played in these yet, of course, but I was kind of like jumping around, you know, and then, you know, walking around, and it felt kind of soft, especially for that underfoot feel, you know what I mean? So has a really nice soft plush feel. I would say it kind of reminds me of like the A1, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's a little bit more stiffer underfoot, but still pretty soft and pretty nice underfoot, and still has a very nice heel compression, right? Obviously, as far as the core feel goes, it's not amazing. So comparing it to the Luka 4, it's a little bit higher up off the ground. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I would say it's around average for the core feel. But again, you know, average core feel with something that has a crazy amount of compression and really good underfoot feel and comfort, I would say that's pretty worth it, you know? And the cushioning setup feels really, really nice. And even the forefoot still feels pretty plush and soft as well. So, so far, I'm really liking the cushioning setup, right? Now moving on to the upper. So they are using, of course, this shroud, right? And it's like this textile material, but it actually has some kind of like a backing to it, you know? It has a little bit of thickness to it. So it's not like the thinnest feeling material. It's definitely a little bulky feeling, but it's really comfortable. You know, it has a very nice cozy feel to it, and it's still like soft, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel super stiff. It doesn't really feel glued down. It just feels a little thick, you know? And it doesn't feel overly thick and overly bulky, which I think is a good thing. But of course, if you want something extremely thin, like, you know, the Luka 4 or like, you know, the Sabrina 2s, or like just a modern day guard shoe, this obviously isn't going to be the best option. But in place of that, you have a very comfortable, cozy upper, right? So here in the toe box, like especially when I'm kind of like walking and this part, you know, the forefoot flexes, it just feels so comfortable right on top of my toes, right? Right over here, there's no pinching, so it feels great, right? Also, we do have some like, it's like a rubberized plastic. It's really, really thin, but it does go around pretty much the entire toe box. And that, I guess, adds a little bit of support and durability, you know, especially if you're doing toe dragging and stuff like that. But it's a pretty minimal material, you know? know? And of course, we do have the shroud. It is, you know, covered by the zipper. And here on the sides, I would say, you know, it does get a little bit stiffer, especially with this material. It feels a little bit stiff. It kind of reminds me of like the Don Issue 6 with that plastic that goes around the entire, you know, shoe. But this is just like a cloth material, right? So first of all, I don't really mind this shroud, and it does give the shoe a very sleek, a very minimal look because it's covering up the laces, of course, right? But one thing that I usually hate about shrouds is that it's really freaking hard to lace up, especially in like the first couple of eyelets. But when you open this up, you have access to all the eyelets, and it's actually pretty easy to pull, and you can really crank down the laces here in like the forefoot area as well as the midfoot, which I really like, you know? So that's actually not a huge problem. And then of course we have the 3 stripes, you know, logo kind of like here on the lateral side as well as on the medial side. It's covered by this like plastic, really soft plastic material, right? For the tongue, there's actually not too much padding. You know, it's more just like this mesh material, and then on top there's like some kind of like targeted pads, which isn't super cozy. So it's okay, you know, as far as the tongue goes. It's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then here in the ankle area, however, is so comfortable, so cozy because of these crazy Achilles pads, right? We got 4 to be exact, you know? So we got one kind of like circular pad, kind of like right underneath your ankle bone, which feels nice. But then also here in the back, first of all, it improves the heel lockdown, right? The heel lockdown is really nice in the shoe, but also it feels extremely comfortable and cozy in the back of the shoe, which feels great, right? There's also kind of like a pull tab. You know, we have this, you know, material that is connected to this pull tab here. So you can just kind of open it up. It kind of acts as a shoehorn, and it makes it so that the shoe is a little bit easier to just slide on. So yeah, as far as, you know, how it feels really comfortable and cozy. I really like how it feels on foot. If for me personally, I would say it's a little bit thicker than I would like, but again, I do like how it adds to the coziness and comfort, which I don't really mind too much, you know what I mean? So yeah, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit, so I actually went up half a size, and this shoe actually fits me pretty dang well. There is a little bit of length though. I would say there's a little bit of length, but going true to size for me, I feel like it might be a little too snug, right? Because me going up half a size is still a really nice snug fit, right? And with this textile material, just because of how thick it is and how robust it is, I don't think it'll stretch out too much once I break it in, you know what I mean? So yeah, the fit right now actually feels pretty nice, right? So here in the toe box, it's a pretty nice snug fit. It's not overly snug, you know what I mean? And I feel like if I went true to size, it might be overly snug. So I'm guessing, of course, I didn't go true to size, but I'm guessing if you do go true to size in the shoe, it's going to be a very snug fit here in the toe box, because me going up half a size is still a pretty nice snug fit here in the toe box, right? Also width-wise, it's actually slightly narrow, and it's very similar to the Don Issue 6. However, it's a little bit, you know, roomier than the Don Issue 6 because I did go true to size in Don Issue 6. So yeah, if you want a really snug fit, however, yeah, you should be fine going true to size here in the Don Issue 7. But if you want to be, you know, a little bit on the safer side of things, you should be fine going up half a size. Again, I need to break these in, I need to play in it, and we'll see how it, you know, fits after I break it in. But right now, it feels pretty dang nice going up half a size, right? So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. Also, this shoe feels extremely freaking supportive. You know what I mean? Like, this shoe overall feels very sturdy. Has a really kind of like robust feel to it, a very stable feel to it as well. You know what I mean? It just feels like you have a really stable ground and platform when you put the shoe on, you know? So yeah, first of all, as far as the lateral containment goes, you know, there's not really much going on here in the forefoot for lateral containment. However, you know, this upper feels extremely supportive, so it feels pretty dang good. And then obviously here in the midfoot, we got the plastic piece, and then here in the heel, we have an internal TPU heel counter as well as like the foam coming up a little bit. So lateral containment overall feels pretty good. Lateral stability also nothing crazy, however, you know what I mean? Like, usually Adidas gives us a really freaking wide base, but this actually feels not super wide, but it feels wide enough, you know? So lateral stability feels good so far. And of course, like I said, heel lockdown feels really good with the Achilles pads, and the overall shoe, you know, has good torsion support and all that. So yeah, support and lockdown feels extremely nice in this shoe. And now moving on to the weight of the shoe, that's the one thing that kind of sucks, you know what I mean? This shoe does not feel extremely light. So I feel like Lightstrike Pro is a pretty lightweight foam, especially comparing to just original Boost. However, it doesn't feel super lightweight. Yeah, it's 13.05 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 13.05 1 ounces, right? So yeah, pretty much just 13 ounces. And you know, the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces. So yeah, it's not like the Don Issue 7 is heavy even. It's just slightly heavier than average. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really different feel from most of the guard shoes out right now. You know what I mean? Because most of the guard shoes out right now, again, feel like the Luka 4, especially from Nike, because it just has a really flexible feel. It's low to the ground. The upper is super minimal. You know what I mean? It's adequate for support, but it doesn't excel in support. You know? But the Don Issue 7 so far feels like it excels in support. Goes the route of having a shoe that feels a lot more comfortable and cozy. Which also prioritizes a really soft and robust cushioning setup as well, which also will probably feel responsive because the traction feels pretty nice so far, right? So yeah, I really like how this shoe feels so far. Again, if you are looking for a very minimal type of shoe, then this probably isn't the best, but again, I feel like so far it feels like it'll be responsive though, you know? Now moving on to the aesthetics, I actually really like it. And also I really like this colorway too. I love this gradient here on the upper. It's just a super clean look, you know, especially with the shroud, you know, kind of like it covers the laces. So yeah, tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, yeah, I actually am pretty dang impressed. You know, I actually have no gripes with this shoe so far. Something, you know, like something that I really dislike, you know? One thing, of course, would be, you know, maybe the weight or maybe the upper feeling a little bit thicker than I would like. But again, it adds a really nice, cozy, comfortable feel, which, again, I don't mind, you know? Which I think is a pretty fair trade-off, you know? So, yeah, I'm liking this shoe a lot so far, and hopefully I like it just as much as the Don Issue 6. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on Donovan Mitchell's brand new signature shoe. Again, if you guys do want to cop a, try to leave a free link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.